So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's start our dialogue session.
Two MCs again. When she mentioned that YB Kyrie is from UK Oxford, I'm also from UK but UKM. So thank you again. I think it's only fair for me to say thank you to all of you today, because the success of the programs depends on you. And thank you so much for being here today to support this program. As mentioned by MC just now, this is the 4th series of KUPI Table Dialogue. I feel slightly frustrated because my other half, my co-creator Fidausi Sufian, is not with me. He's in Bristol now doing his PhD. So when we started the first KUPI table, this was basically we sat at Indah Permai, Menggatal, having our KUPI, enjoying our murtabak Jawa, and then we discussed about how to save the world. Well, some people say that we are too idealistic, but we are proud of who we are. And when the idea first, when we started first KUPI table, the KUPI table was when we look at the scenario at public universities. Again, I'm not saying that, well, all of these are my students, majority of you. There seems to be lack of awareness about current issues, about political issues, about economic issues. And everywhere you go, we have programs like this, similar like this, forum, they call it Bicara Siswa and so on. But the different that makes, the thing that makes KUPI table different from other forums is we try to package it in a more laid-back kind of format. Okay? And the most important thing that we want to do to achieve through KUPI table is try to interact directly with the audience. So therefore, for today, again, both the panel, Puan Elviza and also YBKJ, have agreed that we're going to keep it simple the first 20 minutes, okay? And soon after that, the floor is all yours. I mean, you can ask whatever question you ask, but of course, personal questions, you can, tweet YB and so on, but don't ask, whether you support party A, pemimpin A or pemimpin B. You ask that later, okay? But ask something within the topic. Now, selfie, like, and tweets. Internet has changed our life, changed the way we do things, changed even the way we eat. Do you agree with me? Now, if you go everywhere, you go to KFC, you look at people while they're having their lunch or dinner, all of them are glued to their handphones. Glued to their handphones. Why? Not because of the handphone, but what inside the handphone? Facebook, Twitter. Okay? So social media have drastically changed the way we see things and the way we do things. Okay? So the first question is, YB, what are the main issues or challenges that revolve around the usage of internet and social media? So what are the main issues or challenges that you think that we should address, so that concerns you the most when it comes to social media?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Raizal, for that introduction, and thank you to everyone who's here for the KUPI table dialogue. KUPI. I don't know what this KUPI is. KUPI, okay, KUPI. Hopefully we can have a free flow of exchange this afternoon. But before we do that, just wanted to address Raizal's question about social media and some of the challenges that we face, especially in politics. But before politics, probably just a general point about social media. I think kala dulu, before, the one big difference between then and now is this ability to share your experience online. I think that's the biggest advantage that social media has given you. Before social media, when the internet was just the internet, before you had Facebook and Twitter and all these other applications and platforms for you to share experiences, you just get information from the internet. But now you're able to share your experience, you're able to share your thoughts, you're able to share whatever it is you're doing. So when people go to restaurants, like Raizal said just now, bila dia pergi makan, when they go to eat, they are on their phone or they are on their smartphone. Not necessarily getting information, but rather sharing what they're doing. So the first thing that you'll probably do is probably take a photograph of the donut that you're eating and post it on Instagram and said donut. And, donut. And that particular one photograph with that one word donut will get so many likes and so many interpretation, macam-macam lah interpretation, and then there can be memes from donut, So it creates an opportunity for people to share and for people to share on that experience of somebody else, and that's what it means by going viral and by it being amplified. What this creates is this. It means that with social media and with the internet going the way of social media, people become more informed in the sense that they get more information. But that doesn't mean they become more intelligent. You become more informed, but it doesn't mean you become more intelligent. And what does this mean? Because if you don't utilize information that you get properly and learn from it, then you're not really benefiting anybody. You're just sharing on your own particular experience without finding out much more about what's happening. So for instance, you get a piece of news, you look at it, you're not bothered to find out anything about that news, tapi you just want to be the first person to share it or the first person to say something about it. Because in the world of social media, it's the first person that wins. Kalau you buat lambat, then it's hashtag slowpoke or whatever it is lah. You memang lambat lah, you're basi already. So you want to be the first guy to forward the thing. So you're not necessarily becoming more intelligent. You're becoming more informed because you know what happened. But it doesn't mean that you took the time to understand what happened. You took the time to see whether or not you're forming the right opinions. So this is the biggest challenge in social media for me, is that we are able to pass on things quickly in terms of this shared experience, but are we adding value to that? Are we adding value to the information that we're getting? I think most often we're not adding value to it at all. We are just passing something along, making a comment that really doesn't make sense 99% of the time. But as long as that comment looks good, the comment looks ada sedikit kelakar punya factor, cukuplah kita hantar, kita share, retweet or whatever it is. So I think that the big challenge going forward, just wrapping up the answer, is that I think we need to try to find some value in social media. And that really means don't be lazy, don't just be attracted to social media for the sake of being the first one to share, the first one to retweet, but actually get value from it as well. In a sense that there's so much out there on social media that is good. There's a lot out there which is garbage, but there's also a lot out there that's good. And you can get a lot out of this. And my hope is that young Malaysians get that information and turn it into intelligence so that social media works for all of us.
Thank you. Elvin.
I don't know what is actually challenging about social media because I absolutely love it, but I will try. Okay, let me explain first, coming up from YBKJ's point, that internet and social media is cesspool of erroneous information. So how do you how do you take from that cesspool what is good and what is bad and judging from that cesspool of information? But insofar as social media is concerned, for me, I give you one example. I was in Zurich recently and I wanted to share with my followers and family what I see in Zurich. So I do some research. I researched first, took a picture of the museum and then tell them what's happening in Zurich. So I feel good about myself. I got about 37 likes and half of them on my family. And here when BKJ comes on my Instagram and he wrote one word, he says pollo. So the thing about internet and social media is that it can bring me up, it can bring me down. So most of the time I make it a platform for me to find information and to share what I know. Something I'm passionate about, for instance writing or reading, I was quick to share it. and gossips too at times. I'm guilty because it's always like who's the first that matters, like what YBKJ says just now. I think the challenge is the same with YBKJ's answer, to find what is right and to find what is wrong, and from there to draw a difference or conclusion. That's my challenge.
Okay, thank you, LB and YB. Picking up, just now you said what the main challenges or issues is finding values. Okay, how do we fully utilize the usage of social media? Now, let me just, in 2008 elections, okay? Oh, hang on. I reserve that questions later. Now, you said something about they become lazy, okay? People become lazy because of social media. Now, social media turns us into a political, means we are not interested in politics because of social media. Because they share, most of the time they share, like you said, garbage stuff inside social media. Because in literature itself, there is a point that tells most people when they use social media, they become more passive rather than active in terms of their political knowledge. There is a view. So do you agree with that, or do you think otherwise?
I don't know what the empirical data is on this, but my sense of it is that both. I think you have people who become more disconnected with the world, as in they live in their own world, and they, because of social media, they're able to entrench themselves in their own particular niche interests, which means that they shy away from politics or they shy away from the real world. But at the same time, I think there's been enough instances of how social media has been able to mobilize people politically, whether it is whether it was from Barack Obama's first election campaign, where he managed to galvanize support and also raise funds using social media, whether it was during the Arab Spring in the Middle East, where people were mobilized through Twitter, whether it was in Turkey, where Prime Minister, now President Erdogan, had to ban Twitter and YouTube because it was posting critical comments about his administration. So wherever you go, yes, there is an aspect of social media that allows people who are not interested in politics to continue to be passive and uninterested and apolitical and apathetic. But there is also this growing body of evidence to suggest that social media is bringing political issues to young people who previously have absolutely no context of politics at all. And I think, picking up on the point about garbage being shared, a lot of garbage on social media being shared, I think a lot of politics is also garbage as well. So you end up sharing a lot of that stuff in politics. I'll give you an example about how young people who probably didn't know much about issues suddenly become politicized, or at least they've understood more about what's happening politically because of social media. Let's take an example, GST, where I think a lot of young people previous or prior to the implementation of GST took very little interest in GST. They thought it wouldn't impact them very much. But because of social media, I think they were able to express themselves in very, very creative ways. So you have all sorts of memes on GST, which we read and which we also look at, and it allows us to understand how young people feel about GST. There are a lot of memes of GST. There's a lot of songs about GST, about Ahmad Maslan. It was trending, okay. Now I only have to say his name and people laugh. No, I mean, seriously, because of that, so a lot of people know about politics. So, yes, social media can alienate you, but I think social media allows for a lot of creative ways for young people to get politically conscious, I suppose.
Okay, thank you, YB. LB, I have one question for you, and later, YB, you can respond to this statement. In 2008, Okay, soon after the general elections, Tun Abdullah had this to say: "We didn't think it was important, the internet. Okay, it was a serious misjudgment. We thought that the newspapers, the print media, and the televisions were important, but young people were looking at text messages and blogs." That was quoted in News Times 27 of March 2008, soon after 2008 elections. Now, LB, if you look at the trend now, how do you rate in terms of the government or BN, Barisan Nasional, in terms of their usage of internet and also social media, as opposed to the other political parties?
From 2008 to now, 2015, I can see a vast difference. Now, Barisan Nasional is more present. They have presence on social media, even on political blogs. They have much more. Of course, the opposition always have a head start because that's their medium, even before, even prior to 2008. However, perhaps, okay, let's not take between Barisan and Pakatan. Okay, let's talk about other country, how they make social media beneficial to them. I always watch now, my favorite is Narendra Modi on Twitter. How he used Twitter to thwart frosty relationship between Pakistan and India, and also the not so rosy relationship between India and America. When he wanted to broach the subject, he tweeted good luck to cricket team in Pakistan, and then he would say, I'm sending my secretary to help you over. And he invited Barack Obama to officially visit India, also first on Twitter. So he used the strength of social media, his followers, and also Barack Obama's follower, Abe Shinzo as well, to use it to his advantage, to India's advantage. So perhaps your question here can be answered in the sense that both Pakatan and Barisan must leverage on this at best that they can. At best, it's not in terms of volume. There is a quantitative value to it, and there is also a qualitative value to any information that you share when you are a political party, what you believe in, and then what change you want to make. Those are what I call quantitative. Instead of spreading just about anything, you hashtagging bad words or calling people names, of course it's not good, tempting, but it's not good. This is why you must draw the difference between quantitative and qualitative information that you put on social media. Too short my answer.
It's okay.
Allow me to speak longer.
YB, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know where you went just now. So I was looking where Raisa went, and the shine was coming out. It started already. Because he asked a question about beer, so no, I think we're a bit better than we were before in terms of social media. At least in terms of our presence, in terms of the number of followers that we have, in terms of the engagement that you have in social media, it's a lot better than it was before. But I want to say a couple of things, two things. One is that it's not so much the number of people that follow you, but it's the effect that you have on people on social media. I think that's most important. You have to give an authentic feel about who you are on social media. If you give an impression of being someone that you are not on social media, it doesn't work. So I always tell people, you want to have a presence on Twitter, you want to have a presence on Facebook, it's very important that it feels like it's you. And you must make sure that what you are in real life corresponds to your persona on social media. Because otherwise people will say this is not real, this is not authentic. You're trying to be something that you're not. You're trying to appeal to people by being something that you clearly aren't in real life. Now, the second point is this. The second point is, I think you have to continue to engage, and you have to continue to explain why you're engaging on social media and why it is important that you use this platform. I was an early adopter of social media, especially Twitter, Facebook as well a little bit. Early on, people were happy that there was a minister who was engaging on Twitter, and that you had this direct contact with a member of the cabinet.
Why do you handle your own account?
Yes, for Twitter I handle my own account. Facebook I've got an admin, but I also sometimes post it up on Facebook. But Twitter and Instagram, definitely that's me, nobody else. So if you message me, public message, not direct message, then it's me replying to you. But what I wanted to say is this: is that you cannot have it both ways. So for instance, now I notice that if I answer stuff on Twitter on behalf of the government, even Elvisa's boss, Dato' Rahman, does the same thing. Then people in a very, very negative way, refer to us as, Menteri Twitter, tak ada kerja lain, Twitter and all that. Hey, you got to decide, man. Do you want us to be engaged on social media or not? It's not like we're tweeting 24 hours a day. It just takes us 1 minute to tweet. We're not, we can compose a tweet in 1 minute and send it out, and that's it. It doesn't take up much of our time. So now people are upset, saying that, for instance, recently PM gave instruction to Dato' Shabri on Twitter. People say, why must you give on Twitter? Before that, people were saying, hey, there's not enough engagement on Twitter. So, you make up your mind. It's not that the Prime Minister cannot pick up the phone or can't tell Dato' Shabri to do something, but it's to demonstrate to people that instruction is being made about something that was important. In that particular case, it was top up for GST. There's nothing wrong with that. So you cannot have it both ways. You can't say that, you're not being engaged, and then suddenly say, you're wasting too much time on Twitter. This is part of life. This is part of how we communicate nowadays. It doesn't mean that just because we tweet, it's any less important. So I think that we have to understand that we use the platform for work. We use the platform to answer issues. We use the platform to answer questions. And sometimes Rahman and I, people say, kenapa you jawab soalan yang tak ada dalam kementerian? Because we are engaging in social media. We're members of the government. We can answer anything because we're members of the government. It's collective responsibility. If the minister in charge is not on Twitter, for instance, if Dato' Hassan Malik is not on Twitter, don't laugh, okay, come on, relax. Then what's wrong with us answering if we know the answer? Otherwise we're watching people whacking the government on our timeline and we're not going to do anything. No, we're ministers. So to me, this also changes the way government is run. It has to be flat, it has to be more open, and you have to understand that this is how things work now. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Wabi. The next question is very, very sensitive. Have you ever used Friendster?
Friendster? Yeah. What's Friendster?
LB, you used Friendster before?
I missed the boat. I was born in 85.
Sorry?
I missed the boat.
You missed the boat?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, I think it's about time that we move to the audience. Okay, do we have one question? I think we believe we have one question there to the panel. Okay, now.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good evening to Ms. Elvisa. Okay, my name is Muhammad Fadlan bin Mazliman Shah. I'm from Faculty of Business Management in UiTM Sabah. Okay, so my first question is going to be for you, Mr. KJ. And for your information, I'm one of your followers in Twitter. Mr. KJ, since you are the members of the cabinet, so I would like to ask, social media has a strong influence in nowadays political landscapes because, as you mentioned just now, the initiative of Arab Spring was because of social media. And reflect to this fact, there was a rumors that the government need to censor the internet. There was a suggestion made by former Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir, and because of this, is the government started to think that social media is a threat or the opportunity to approach the people? And that's my first question. Okay, so my second question would be, YBKJ, are you using your Twitter account as your personal or for your work? Okay, before this there was an issue about tabung haji. Okay, there was a tweet. There was your tweet that your views regarding your views. So instead of you tweet it to the people, why don't you just confront the chairman of tabung haji and settle this controversy, and then you can tweet the solution. Okay.
The first is what's the first question? What's the first question, Rizal? Huh? Threat or opportunity? Yeah. Okay. Oh, censorship. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Look, it's more an opportunity than a threat. You know, I mean, I think social media, on balance, it is more something that you can gain from than is threatening or dangerous to society. We had a discussion whether or not we should regulate the internet. I think the position that we took was that we made a commitment in the Bill of Guarantees for the Multimedia Super Corridor. This was under Dr. Mahathir's time, not to censor the internet. Of course, now subsequently he's come back to say that we should regulate and censor the internet. I think that if we ever do think about regulating content in the internet, it should not be content that is critical politically. I don't think that you should censor political content. But there might be a case, or no, it's not might be a case, there certainly is a strong case for blocking sites, for instance, child pornography, pedophile sites. This is very topical right now. If you talk about to me, the most depraved crime yang paling keji sekali is child pornography and pedophilia. And a lot of countries who commit to freedom of information have blocked sites for pedophilia. So I think on that particular score, there's nobody that's going to disagree with that, you know. But we have to identify very, very clearly that this is the case. Maknanya, if we block certain things, and child pornography is one of them. And that's one thing that I can think about, which I think 100% of people will agree should be blocked on the internet. Because it's not just child pornography. Child pornography leads to pedophilia. I mean, how did you get the photo of the child in that position in the first place? You are violating that child. You know, so that's why I feel very strongly about it. Secondly, your point, your second question about whether it's a personal or whether it's for work. It's both. I mean, you know, my account, I use it for public statements for work, and I use it for personal tweets as well. I mean, I don't have two accounts where, you know, I tweet my personal stuff on one account and I tweet my work stuff on another account. It's just all there. But I think people are intelligent enough to understand what is a work tweet and what is a personal tweet. If I'm tweeting about Manchester United, then it's obviously a personal tweet. You know, if I'm tweeting about 1MDB or Tabung Haji, obviously it's a work tweet. You know, and it's a link, obviously, to a statement that I make about the case. Now, why do I not confront? Because certain things you have to make a public stand. Certain things is important for you to make a public stand. I mean, sometimes if you go and see somebody and say, you know, look, I'm not happy about this, you may not get the desired effect. But in this particular case, I asked around my UMNO youth people, this is a particular case about Tabung Haji buying land from 1MDB. And 1MDB is something that has a lot of controversy right now. I don't want Tabung Haji to be involved with it. So I spoke with my UMNO Youth Exco and I said it's important that we have a public stand about this. It's not enough to go and say, hey, we're not happy about this privately. Because then people say, okay, don't worry, you know, we'll take care of it. But if you make a public stand, then it may lead to something changing. It may lead to people taking you seriously because you made a public stand. There are certain things that you can discuss in private. I know there's no doubt about that. I mean, you know, I don't tweet everything I need to discuss with my cabinet colleagues. There are certain things that I discuss privately, but when certain things are important enough, you have to make a public stand. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with making a public stand. And that's what we did with this particular Whether right or wrong, we made a stand and we disagreed with it. And of course, this morning it came out that they ended up selling the land because they agreed that it was a problem. So, Manana is not that I cannot go to the person. Of course, I can go to the person, but there's a time and a place for private discussion, private counsel, private advice, and there's a time and place also to make a public stand, so that you force your point in a much more forceful manner.
LV, do you want to respond to that questions? Maybe the censorship. You as a columnist yourself, among practitioners, I'm sure there is a concern that maybe, just maybe, the perception among people that maybe the government trying to control social media. So yes, YPKJ has spoken about pornography, but other than that, is there any feeling among media practitioners that perhaps that the governments are moving towards to censor the social media?
To me personally, I've been writing for about, 10 years, published about 7 years. I never have that feeling. Whatever I tweeted, whatever I put on my Facebook wall, my column, whatever I write, no, I'm free to say that's my room, that's my ruangan in Bahasa Melayu, to say my view. To answer your question, Rahiza, I don't feel that we are moving towards that direction. I think with social media and the internet, it has enlarged our democratic sphere, and to curb the democratic sphere is something moving backwards. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, LV. Okay, do we have any questions from the floor? Anyone?
A very good evening. My name is Nazri. I'm a social media supervisor at a company currently. So basically, in our company, we are basically depending much on social media in order to market our products and our services. So basically, we depend on that almost 80% of the time. So if the government, what I want to ask, maybe it's a bit, it's very simple. Can the government or the industry in Malaysia survive if without social media? Without social media, if the government in the future, maybe we never know, to impose any restriction upon social media in Malaysia, for example, Facebook and whatnot. And I believe most of us in this hall, I think they are, some of us involved in online businesses and much things like that. So can the industry or the government itself survive without social media? Thank you.
That's a great question from online businesses. That's the other reason why we have to be very careful when it comes to regulating and blocking social media in Malaysia, because it's not just about stopping the flow of information, but it's also curtailing online businesses like yours. So I think it's very, very important that, as I said earlier to his question just now, if you do want to block, then you have to be very specific and block very specific things like child pornography. So as long as your business is not child pornography, I think you're safe.
Kelly? It's about online business. Should we put restrictions?
I don't believe in restriction. I believe if you want to promote positive thing, I believe we shouldn't restrict anything. It's a free flow of information, unless like YYBKJ is something very specific, something very grave, like child pornography.
But I don't know. I heard that the government wanted to impose fees for those who. Is there any? No.
There was talk of registering. There was talk of getting you to make. The only thing that we discussed was to remove anonymity. Maknanya you cannot be anonymous on social media. But we realized that it was technically a very difficult thing to do. So there was a suggestion, for instance, blogs cannot be anonymous. You have to register with MCMC. But then, God, there's so many blogs out there, there's so many Facebook accounts out there, I don't even know how you would manage that. So we decided to abandon that idea.
Okay, thank you, Ravi. Okay.
Hello, my name is Nur Farahid, and I'm from Faculty of Policy Studies. So basically, I'm gonna ask in Bahasa. So I heard once of your opinion in Perhimpunan UMNO saying that you wanted to meremajakan parti. So, what do you mean by meremajakan party? Does you mean like you want all the ministers to have their own account in social media? Because some of the minister, I mean like some of the kind of like old minister, sorry, yang agak ber sikit macam tu Hasan Malik Hotel. Kan? So actually saya tidak seberapa faham dengan maksud meremajakan parti.
Okay, Wabi.
Thank you very much. On meremajakan parti, tengok dekat sikit. On meremajakan parti, at first the issue was that amongst the pemuda and putri of UMNO, we felt that we wanted more young people to become leaders. We wanted to get more young people, and it's really because we looked at the opposition parties and we saw so many young members of parliament from their party. So the first thing for peremajaan was actually we wanted more young people from our party to be to be given opportunities. But somebody told me then, he said, ini peremajaan bukan saja pada usia, because even somebody who's old can be remaja also. So we thought about the concept and we agreed that yes, we want more young people dari segi usia to be given more opportunities, but at the same time peremajaan ini maksudnya even those who are slightly older can be remaja by how they interact with people. And Elvisa mentioned a great example just now of Narendra Modi. Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of Prime Minister? I heard it just now. India. Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India. Next time I visit, you have to say he's the Prime Minister of India. Prime Minister of India. Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India. He's about 60 years old. Narendra Modi is 60 years old. At the elections last year, Narendra Modi, who's from a party called BJP, his party is called the BJP party. He went up against Congress party in India. Congress party, the leader of Congress party, who was going to become Prime Minister if Congress won, was a chap by the name of Rahul Gandhi. Now, Rahul Gandhi is the son of, not the son of Mahatma Gandhi. He's the son of Sonia Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi. He's the son of Sonia Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi is the grandson of Indira Gandhi, and he's the great-grandson of Jawaharlal Nehru, who is the founder of India. Basically, he's from a long dynasty, but that's not what's important about Rahul. The important thing about Rahul is he's about 40 years old. He's young, he's handsome, and he's somebody that the young generation should easily connect to. But guess who young people in India voted in the last election? Did they vote for Rahul or did they vote for Narendra Modi? They voted for Narendra Modi. 60 years plus, 64 if I'm not mistaken. Why? Why did they choose him and not the 40-year-old guy? Why did they choose him and not the guy who was young? They chose him because Narendra Modi, although he was in his 60s, he was able to meremajakan diri dia. Rahul didn't believe in Twitter. Rahul didn't believe in Facebook. In fact, when he came to Malaysia, and I've known Rahul for a long time, he came to Malaysia and I caught up with him. And he asked me, he said, Khairi, what are you doing with all this Twitter nonsense? You know, this is not good. You know, you should just be on the ground. I said, Rahul, you know, this is the way forward. He didn't have any presence online, zero Twitter, zero Facebook. Narendra Modi was online on Twitter. He presented, it was just not about being online. He presented policies for young people. I promised to grow the economy, build jobs, create jobs for young people. That's peremajaan. Peremajaan in terms of policy. That's why Narendra Modi won. So, at the Perhimpunan Agung UMNO, I said, look at Modi, look at Rahul Gandhi. It's not who's younger, but it's who appeals to young people. That's what peremajaan is about. It's not just about being young. You can be young, you can be 30s, tapi kalau your mindset is 60s, it's not peremajaan. So it's all about appealing to young people. That's what peremajaan is.
Jiwa muda. Ellie,
Yes. What was the question of peremajaan?
peremajaan through social media, by using social media.
Okay, this is what I believe in peremajaan. Okay, anybody can be remaja in any medium that you pick. You can be someone young on social media, someone that speaks about things that matter to maybe Nadia and me, something that you are good at. So that's you, being young, being in trend, for you to put forward your message, for you to gather followers, and for you to share information. But peremajaan in terms of politics, can I answer this? No. Peremajaan in terms of politics is a bit dicey in Malaysia because YPKJ perhaps have an added advantage because he started very early on Twitter. I was one of his earlier follower, so he has that. Because on Twitter you have to learn the momentum, you have to know your audience, you have to know your speed. You cannot just blast your way through not knowing. So when you want to make your party or your organization or your NGO young and appealable to the young people, you must understand the momentum in Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. If you don't understand that, you don't understand your audience, you do not engage with them, the account will fall flat.
Okay, thank you, Alvi. Okay, another question from me.
A very good afternoon, especially to Mr. KJ and Mr. Okay. I am Richard. I'm from Tourism Faculty, UiTM Sabah, Part 6. Okay, there is one question for my understanding and my opinion regarding this circulate in order to post in social media, right, Mr. KJ? Alright, this is when I heard all the conversation just now, there is one idea about POTA. Do you know POTA is? I'm not asking Mr. KJ. Prevention of Terrorism Act. Okay, what is I'm understanding is whatever that we post, especially is related to the government policies, that there is a act or there is there is a law will be took into that person, which that person's commenting about issues of government. So it is relating to the issues of express our thought in social media, as Mr. KJ also mentioned just now. By posting in social media is how life works now. So there is no right, no wrong about what we post in social media. So what is the comment from Mr. KJ about this thing? Thank you.
Okay, I think YB, it's where do you draw the line? When you talk about censorship, talk about, just now you mentioned just about pornography, but seditious, for example, okay, seditious. Where do you draw the, especially young people, when they type, sometimes they type so quickly, they didn't put enough thought into what they type on social media. So where do you draw the line?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the question. I think I'm going to go there as well. Nanti dia orang kata lelaki tak pergi pula. Your concerns are valid. But I don't think it refers to POTA, because POTA is Prevention of Terrorism Act, and POTA is really just for terrorists. It's not directed to people who post critical comments about government online. POTA is designed to ensure that we have a law in place that can take action against people who are really terrorists. People who want to go to Iraq and Syria and join IS, Islamic State and all that. We need legislation to be able to arrest them. So, sorry? No, but I think Raizal, he managed to redirect it a bit. So I'll explain based on what he said. What is seditious?
Yes.
What is seditious? Yeah.
Yeah.
So ini di bawah Akta Hasutan, Sedition Act. But even then, we just recently amended the Sedition Act in Parliament. Kalau dulu, anything, any action or anything that you say that can create hatred towards the government is considered hasutan, and you can be charged in court for that. But we took that out. We took that out because we said it's ridiculous in a democracy that you cannot criticize the government. You cannot make it a crime to criticize the government. Tidak boleh menjadi satu jenayah kalau nak kritik government. So we took that out. So you can say whatever you want about the government, we're not going to arrest you. That's your concern. Yeah? But we still have the Sedition Act because in this country, we believe there are certain things that you cannot say. So for instance, kalau kita cakap ataupun tulis sesuatu dalam media sosial yang menimbulkan kebencian dan kemarahan terhadap satu kaum ataupun satu agama, that's seditious. And I think a lot of Malaysians will agree. There are certain lines that you cannot cross. You cannot incite kemarahan, kebencian terhadap one religion. That's not right. Maybe in other countries in the world, because they have complete freedom, it's okay. You can insult a religion, or you can insult somebody else from another community. Tak ada masalah. But in Malaysia it's different. If you look online, sometimes you see all these insults. Of course, in a Western world, one Western country, they'll be just like, tak payah ambil tindakan undang-undang. You just criticize balik. Kalau ada orang yang, for instance, say bad things about religion, then people will just attack him online. But in this country, we still need the laws, because sometimes people can go overboard. And when people go overboard, we must make sure that it doesn't spread. Because if it spreads, then you have people of different religion, people of different communities fighting against each other. And we can't have that. And the other thing that's unique to Sabah Sarawak, as this last bit, is kalau ada tulisan ataupun usaha untuk keluarkan Sabah dan Sarawak daripada Malaysia, that's now considered seditious, because we believe that the federation must hold. That's right.
YB, what about account? Facebook, for example, we have account created outside Malaysia, Facebook, or subscribing to terrorism like ISIS. How do we deal with this kind of issues?
We are going to come up. I don't know. I mean, don't quote me, media, because this is something that I'm not sure it's done yet. But we're going to come up with another law for terrorism activities which are committed outside, so that we can bring them back. But that's still being developed.
Okay, I want to elaborate on the point of Sedition Act that YBKJ touched on just now. But firstly, Nadia, my colleague, just mentioned that we're trending on Twitter. Round of applause. KUPI table.
I think we have another question there. Yeah.
Can I answer the Sedition Act? This is very important. Very rare I disagree with him. But on that point, I have to disagree with YBKJ. This is why I think Sedition Act, we are not needed anymore. It should be repealed totally. And most of my lawyer colleagues would actually agree with me, and I hope my husband as well. Section 121 and 505 of Penal Code, in my opinion, has sufficient provision to protect us from any seditious material. What bothers most of the people about Sedition Act amendment is that it's not home and inciting racial, religious. We're multicultural. I think most of us here are mature enough to know there are certain borders that you can cross and you can't cross. However, what bothers most of readers, and especially my followers on Twitter and Facebook, is the definition of seditious tendency, which tends to be a bit blurry. You do not specifically mention what tantamount to seditious tendencies.
Yeah, I think I do agree with LV. That's the concern of most public. Where do you draw the line? Sometimes calling people stupid considered as seditious? And where do we stop? How do you define what is considered seditious and not? Okay, let's maybe we have another question there. Yeah.
Okay. So Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon. Okay, my name is Muhammad Shadikin Ramli. I'm from Faculty of Business, Bachelor in Administration. So actually, we are talking about social media right now, right? So it is very famous right now. We are talking about GST. Okay, so GST. Okay, people are talking about the implementation of GST, blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. Okay. Actually, since you are the member of the cabinet itself, so you must have a bit more information rather than the public itself. Since the social media sometimes must have what we call as misperception or misinformation about GST itself. So you yourself, as a part of being a Minister of Youth and Sport, do you think it is relevant to implement GST? Okay, that's my first question. Okay, the second question, because we all know about the GST is a multi-stages taxation rather than SST, which is the single taxation stages. So maybe could you please clear it out maybe towards us, because there's some issues or problems first of people being fussy about GST itself. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. The first question is, yes, I think it's relevant to implement GST. It's not a popular thing to do, and we understand that governments have to do things which are sometimes not popular. I mean, if you do popular things all the time, then you shouldn't be in government. You should just join a singing contest. But we have to do this because our reliance on income tax, direct taxes basically, and our reliance on taxes from oil and gas must change. And in most countries, 160 plus countries in the world, you have GST or whatever they call it, VAT in their countries. So it is not something that is unusual. Other countries have it. Basically the principle is very simple. GST, the more you consume, the more you have to pay. It's a consumption tax. Kalau kita beli, kita kena bayar. That's all there is. We had SST before. So we've changed SST to GST. Now, some prices have to go up because ada benda yang dulu yang tak kena SST. Sekarang ni kena GST. So I wish perhaps we were more honest about that. Yeah. I think part of the reason is because before GST was implemented, some of us said, jangan risau, harga tak akan naik lepas GST implemented. We should have just been honest and said some things will go up, which is the truth. Yeah, some things will go up. I think it's important for people to know that GST increases pendapatan kerajaan. This is why we do GST, supaya government gets more pendapatan, gets more revenue. Now, what people want to know is that if government gets more revenue from GST, are you spending it right? Are you spending it right? This is what people want to know. I think a lot of people say, okay, we don't mind having GST, tapi kita nak tahu duit ini dibelanja dengan betul ataupun tidak, ataupun duit ini dibelanja cara yang tak betul, cara yang boros, cara yang rasuah, macam-macam. So we have to demonstrate that, okay, katalah kerajaan dapat tambahan 1 bilion daripada GST. Apa yang kita belanjakan dengan 1 bilion tersebut? Contohnya sekolah di Sabah, hospital di Sabah, jalan-jalan di kawasan pedalaman. So we must show this. Barulah saya rasa rakyat akan faham bahawa GST ini ada faedahnya. Kalau tidak, they don't understand. All they see is harga naik untuk saya. Kalau dulu saya bayar sekian-sekian, hari ini saya kena bayar RM10.60 untuk top up, sebagai contoh. Di mana 60 sen itu pergi? So kalau government, as in our government, can demonstrate that inilah tambahan peruntukan daripada GST, I think the level of anger comes down. Because you know that things are being spent. Tetapi ini memerlukan masa. Then I tell people, I kata GST ini memang akan mengundang kemarahan. And we just have to live with it for a while. Because you don't expect you will implement GST, semua orang tepuk tangan. Nobody claps when you introduce a new tax. But as long as you demonstrate that that tax is being used properly, people will accept later on. That's one. Secondly, adalah berkenaan dengan some confusion when we do messaging. This one we admit, ini kelemahan kita. So, balik kepada isu top up. This was something that I feel we could have handled a bit better. Sebab kita kata bahawa tidak akan ada perubahan dari segi harga. RM10 maksudnya RM10. And then now we are RM10.60. So this has cost us a lot. You imagine we can lose the government because of 60 cents. No, I mean this is a serious matter. 60 sen boleh hilang kerajaan. You know? So I think on that score, yes, implementation of GST ada satu dua benda that was weak. Then we admit, then we are trying to improve it. And the third thing, just last thing, is berkenaan dengan the traders themselves. We cannot deny that there are people who are taking advantage of GST. Dia ambil kesempatan GST untuk menaikkan harga lebih daripada GST. So yang naik itu bukan hanya 600, tetapi dia naik sekali profit margin. Dan dia kata dia naik sebab kena, macam you katalah, multi-level. Walaupun multi-level, every level you can claim back. So dia bukan berganda. Dia bukan cukai berganda. Yeah? So basically to simplify it, they shouldn't be raising their prices that much. That is why baru ni kita bawa kes ke mahkamah. 2 kes dah pergi ke mahkamah. Orang yang jual harga yang lebih daripada sepatutnya. So we need to enforce the law more, so that people who take advantage of GST, we make sure that we take them to court. But coming back to the point just now, yes, I can be populist today and say, ya, saya tak setuju dengan GST, semua tepuk tangan. Yeah? But we have to be responsible. We have to make tough decisions, and that's being part of government. Kalau tidak, just leave the government. We don't leave the government. But GST for the long-term increase in government revenue is important. And what's most important to you, I want to just stress again, is that you know that we are spending the money properly. And if that's the case, then I think in the long term people will accept GST.
I think, so in a way, YB, you concurred with Tun Mahathir when he said that we could have done better in terms of conveying the messages to the public on GST, about how we communicate about GST.
Okay.
You mentioned just now that...
There's also something to do with psychology. Ada yang kata we didn't convey all about GST sebelum pelaksanaan GST, but that's not true. We've been doing so many roadshows about GST before GST was implemented. Our good friend Ahmad Maslan, for the last 1 year, he's been everywhere talking about GST. But the problem with psychology manusia is, sebelum benda tu dilaksanakan, orang tak dengar. Nobody cared about GST before, but after 1st of April, when it hit your pocket, that's when you started to care about GST. So by then it was already too late. But you cannot accuse the government of not giving penerangan. Penerangan GST been going on for the last 2 years. But human psychology, I don't want to listen to the GST lah. Sampai benda ni berlaku, barulah kita dengar apa yang sebenarnya berlaku. And I cannot also salahkan, I mean, Rizal's point, we made some mistakes, for instance, Mat Maslan made a mistake about the top-up. Dia kata dalam parlimen, dia kata RM10, confirm RM10, dan last RM10.60. But this Mat Maslan for the last 2 years, 24/7, dia tidur, makan, minum GST tu. Dia otak dia dah tepu dah. I mean, he's my friend, he's GST out already. You imagine if you were the only person handling communication for GST for 2 years. You ingat you will not fumble once? Of course you're bound to fumble. He's human.
It just happened in Fumble.
It just so happened in Fumble on top up lah. So I don't want to have his job. Nobody wants to have his job. But dia pergi 2 tahun, dia cakap, you are bound to make a mistake. And unfortunately that was the mistake.
Elvi, a quick one.
Okay, now listening to YBKG on GST, I am certain there's only 2 things in life, that is my death and paying tax. However, consumption tax like GST, like YBKG, is everywhere, and I believe consumption tax like GST also is part of me participating in good governance. I live in this country, I pay tax, I want to see the best out of it. However, communication for any policy is key. Communication creates perception. If your perception is bad, but your policy is good, your communication is bad, which subsequently will create a bad perception, is pointless.
So how do you rate the government approach in using social media in sending out the message on GST?
God, if I have the job, I will refuse it. No, but it's very unpopular and it's difficult. But I have to give credit to them trying. The rest is nitpicking. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Questions there?
Ada yang di mikrofon. Bukan merajuk.
Hello, my name is Nurul Hidayah Zainal. I prefer to talk in Malay. Okay, begini. Hari ini kita bercerita tentang laman jaringan sosial. Dia merupakan satu bentuk medium yang akan terjadi satu interaksi antara dua pihak. Dan sebagaimana kita tahu, untuk menerima respon yang positif ataupun negatif ini di luar kawalan, sebab semua orang ada hak untuk bersuara. Sebagai kerajaan dan yang berhormat, apakah pendekatan dan persediaan YB untuk berhadapan dengan potensi orang yang akan kita hasilkan untuk hari esok? Sebab sebagaimana kita ketahui, kita telah hasilkan teroris yang menggunakan laman jaringan sosial. Kita telah hasilkan seorang yang pervert. Dalam masa yang sama kita hasilkan keyboard warrior. Keyboard warrior ni kita nampak perkara kecil, tapi kesan dia besar kepada emosi masyarakat Malaysia atau seluruh dunia. Jadi apa pendekatan YB?
Soalan yang sangat-sangat baik sekali. Saya tidak anggap bahawa budaya keyboard warrior ini 100%nya negatif kepada masyarakat. Ada keyboard warrior yang negatif dari segi dia kecenderungan mereka untuk terlalu cepat menghukum orang lain. Ini dimaksudkan keyboard warrior yang membawa unsur yang negatif, yang berselindung di belakang anonymity, maksudnya tak payah letak nama yang sebenar, identiti yang sebenar, dan cepat menghukum orang, cepat bully orang dan sebagainya. Dan saya rasa ini amat-amat negatif sekali. Tetapi bagi saya sebagai orang politik, kalau saya anggap setiap cyber keyboard warrior itu sebagai musuh dan sebagai unsur yang negatif, saya tak dapat menggarapkan semangat yang ada daripada setengah daripada keyboard warrior ni yang mungkin nak mengubah secara positif masyarakat mereka. Ada keyboard warrior yang mungkin tidak ada platform, tidak ada saluran untuk buat perubahan tersebut, dan mereka terpaksa pergi ke Facebook, pergi ke Twitter untuk menyuarakan pandangan mereka, mungkin dengan nada yang perli, mungkin dengan nada yang sinis, tetapi sebenarnya mereka nak bantu untuk mengubah keadaan masyarakat. Cuma mereka tak pernah diberi peluang, tak diberi platform, dan tak diundang in real life untuk bersama. Bagaimana kita pilih mereka yang ada positive vibe dengan mereka yang negative vibe ini? Itu judgement. Itu budi bicara kita lah, kita kena tengok really who's positive and who's negative. Tetapi bagi saya, kalau kita kata mereka yang semua judgmental online, dia tak boleh pakai dan adalah musuh pada politik ataupun pada sistem pentakdiran kita, maka kita akan hilang satu sumber ataupun resource yang bagi saya cukup penting. Saya ambil satu contoh konkret. Salah seorang daripada pegawai saya di Kementerian Belia dan Sukan, dulu keyboard warrior, kerja dia hentam saya saja. Betul, kerja dia hentam saya saja. Dan dia selalu unmentioned. Dia tak nak sebut nama saya. Dia hentam dalam dia tanpa sebut saya punya handle lah, dia sindir macam-macam lah, lebih daripada sindir, dia direct hit, you know. Tapi akhirnya saya pergi jumpa dia. Saya tanya dia, saya kata, are you a keyboard warrior or are you somebody who actually wants to do something? Dan dia bagi tahu saya bahawa actually I want to do something, but I want your attention. Jadi bila saya begitu, saya tanya dia apakah idea dia, dan saya dapati bahawa beliau actually mempunyai idea yang bagus dan hari ini kerja di Kementerian Belia dan Sukan, tetapi bermula sebagai seorang keyboard warrior. Pada masa yang sama, just to wrap up the point, I think on the negative side, amat-amat penting bagi kita menunjukkan budaya yang betul dalam internet. And of course, budaya betul ni is subjective. Tetapi I'm very concerned on the negative side of keyboard warrior. Cepat menghukum orang ni adalah satu budaya yang amat-amat Teruk sekali. Yes, sorry.
Kepada respon dalam laman jaringan sosial ni menghasilkan seseorang yang ada masalah emosi bukan tentang keyboard warrior semata.
Ya.
Jadi apa cara kerajaan fikirkan untuk mengawal dari sudut penyampaian dan juga penerimaan masyarakat?
Saya rasa kebanyakan daripada mereka yang mengamal media sosial, kalau ada mereka yang ada gangguan emosi yang menggunakan media sosial, you can tell. Sama ada kita nak buat counselling, I don't know how we can intervene directly. Tetapi mereka yang tak betul, yang short sikit ni, you can tell. Dan kebanyakan daripada orang tak layan mereka, sebab mereka akan meroyan sendiri, continue on. So the best thing, this comes to the main point. The best thing is self-regulation. Maksudnya regulation kita tak perlu ada government yang kata, oh this guy is crazy, ada chop gila. No, I think most people will know, and then that's how you operate online.
I think even social media, Twitter, Facebook, they have their own terms and conditions that if you have cases like this, you can always complain, okay, and then steps will be taken to address those issues. Elvi.
Jawab dalam bahasa Melayu. Impact. Sekejap, Nurul. Soalan tu saya nak tanya, impact contoh orang dalam social media kepada generasi muda. Is that, adakah itu soalan? Bukan. Keyboard warrior and everything. I think it's not, okay, keyboard warrior, they exist everywhere, in every country, trying to sell their policies, trying to make people believe, nak entice orang suruh percaya. Ada di mana-mana, macam YPKJ cakap tadi. Tapi saya juga percaya, internet audience ni adalah kebanyakannya terdiri daripada orang-orang yang boleh membuat keputusan yang baik, sebab dia expose. What internet does is that dia meluaskan sfera demokrasi, sfera information. So bila you ada banyak information, you become more mature. So bila orang muda sekarang, saya rasa mereka lebih matang jika nak dibandingkan masa saya muda dulu. Sebab information saya limited. Saya hanya baca bahan bercetak, saya dengar apa yang guru saya kata. Dulu sekarang, Nurul boleh buka Twitter, boleh buka Facebook, boleh buka news portal. So Nurul ada choices. So saya rasa orang macam yang famous di laman media sosial, politician, artis, Aliza, mereka ada kolektif, tanggungjawab kolektif untuk menerapkan nilai-nilai yang baik. That way mungkin kita boleh menjuruskan jadi dapat orang muda yang menggunakan jaringan media sosial dengan lebih bertanggungjawab.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Sorry, WBKJ and visa. Actually, my question is in relation to the Sedition Act. So I was going to ask two questions about Sedition Act. It is understood that the Sedition Act is such a controversial act. The problem with the Sedition Act, as we read in the news media, is that the question was whether it is still relevant in our society today, in our country. Of course, we inherit the Sedition Act from the British, and they have actually abolished it. And there was call for it to be abolished, and even the Prime Minister has actually made the announcement that it would be abolished. My question is, would YBKJ and Visa agree that the resentment, the anger, the frustration from the people and objecting to the Sedition Act is they see that it has not been enforced or implemented fairly. For example, I would say we would see arrest, investigation being made against mostly towards opposition leaders. When we have certain groups I would say, who has also made some statements which touch on the boundaries of racial and religious sensitivity, but it is seen that no action or even investigation or even arrest was made. Would YB and Lisa agree that these are one of the main reasons why it is seen that created so much anger and objection towards Sedition Act? That's one. The second question is, personally, would YB or Lisa agree that whether Sedition Act is still relevant today? When it is relevant, whether we agree that it should be maintained and continued, even though it has been passed, the amendment has been passed, but on a personal level, YB and Lisa believe that it should be maintained.
Thank you, Nelson.
Nelson, your first point, I agree. I mean, I think one of the problems with the Sedition Act is selective application of it. I think if you have a more fair application of the Sedition Act, people won't have such a big problem with it. The second point, Riza has already answered, saying that she personally feels that it's not relevant anymore. I still feel that it is, for now. I don't think that the provisions in the penal code are enough, because the burden of proof is much easier with the Sedition Act. And on issues which regard hate speech towards religion and race especially, I have very, very little tolerance for that, which is why the penal code is not enough. And also the other thing that you have to bear in mind is that because there have been not many prosecutions under the provisions of the penal code, the judicial precedences are not as much as the Sedition Act. Sedition Act, banyak precedents. So you can refer to that, you can say this is sedition based on that. But on the penal code, tak banyak. That's why we still need the Sedition Act. But going forward, hopefully, one day, we won't need it. And it'll be enough that we have the penal code and also societal censure, which is that society attacks people who are racist or who abuse religious speech. That's what you really want. Mature country one day where bila kita cakap sesuatu yang menghina agama atau kaum, you don't need the government to come in and arrest that person, but the society will say that person is wrong. That person is wrong, and we should tell him that he's wrong or tell her that he's wrong. That is, of course, a very developed country, mature country.
Much answer the question, however, perhaps he's right. This is part of why it creates a lot of anger in civil society, maybe NGOs, things like that. But the law has been passed, so move on. But my view is, I think we have enough provisions of the law to contain hate speech against religion.
Okay, so there are a few requests for questions, but I'm afraid I have to take one last question. Okay,
Good afternoon. I'm Aslinda, one of the long distance learning program student of UiTM Sabah. My question is actually about the social media is an effective platform for the public today to raise arguments against any political issues within the country. Can this be seen as a political movement that will bring the public together as never seen before, and where they go from here? That's my question. Thank you.
Political mobilization.
I think social media is a tool, a platform. Macam tadi YBKJ cakap, in Egypt, and we see uprising in Egypt, where is it, red shirt in Bangkok, it's a platform. When we're talking about platform and tool, a conduit pipe, it is actually to make your communication easier. Yes, I think the answer to your question, yes, it is relevant in today's political landscape.
Thank you for your question, Mazida. The question was whether or not it becomes a movement in bringing people together. It brings people together in a sense that it allows for people to be in the same space, the same social media space. But whether or not it leads to people having the same opinion, I don't think so. If you go into social media, you'll see people having so many different opinions about so many things. Just about one particular issue, you have people disagreeing. So just because you have one platform, the question was whether or not if you have social media, everybody can come together about one particular issue. It's not, I don't think it works like that. I think it creates a platform for you to talk to each other and for you to share your opinions and experiences, but it doesn't mean that you agree. It probably means, ironically enough, that you create more different views than ever before. Because it's so easy for people to voice out, that people will say, no, I actually have a different view from this person, from this person, from this person. So what you end up having is a multitude of views, so many different views, that it doesn't really crystallize into one. And I've always said the trick for a politician is all these views on social media, it equals noise. There's a lot of noise on social media. There's There's a lot of background noise. So if you go into Twitter, if you go into Facebook, so many views, banyak sangat pandangan, dia macam noise. It's macam noise. But if you're an astute politician or leader, you try to find the music in all that noise. You find the song, you find the music. It can be a combination of views, but it's what's right and what's acceptable to most people. Then you would have succeeded in utilizing this medium. So that's really the trick. It's not so much about getting people together on one particular view, you can't do that. But it's trying to get a consensus, that music, from the noise.
Okay, thank you, YB. Thank you, LB. I think now it's 40, then I know there are a few questions. There are a few audience that want to ask questions. I suggest you troll YB KJ. Who knows? Maybe he will hire you. Okay? So, to wrap up the topic for today, I think social media is a valuable asset if we use it wisely. As we mentioned earlier by YB KJ, it's just a matter of we finding the right values, how to fully utilize the usage of social media. So with that, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today with us. Thank you so much, YB Kali, and thank you, Elvisa, for joining the fourth KUPI table. Pass it over to MC. Thank you.